So welcome Nancy Juetten to the stage. This is Bettina Carey, and I am welcoming Nancy in a conversation that we're going to have about her upcoming release of Bye Bye Boring Bio. So welcome, and I cannot wait to hear what you are going to talk about today.
Well, thanks, Bettina. I'm really excited to be here and to be waving the flag for the Bye Bye Boring Bio 2020 workbook that has been created to serve speakers, experts, and authors who need to speak up virtually to make the most of their upside during this shelter-in-place scenario in which we all find ourselves because of COVID-19.
Yes, and I see you getting on all kinds of interviews, and your career is just blowing up in a really good way because you have your boring bio not so boring. So I recently had an experience with you where you took just about 100 words of my boring bio and you pumped it up and uplifted it, and I've used it, and it's been used as an introduction now, and it's completely made me ready and willing and able to accept the duties when opportunity knocks. And that's a real philosophy that both of us practice, is just be ready. So I cannot thank you enough, by the way. And it's really opening up doors, kicking things to the curb. I can actually bring it up and read it at some point here. And share a little bit about what you found with my bio when you read it.
Well, sometimes we've had decades of experience doing a whole variety of things, and what we want to do is make sure that the bio sets us up to do more of that thing that's high profit and high value, so we can make more hay sooner versus later. And what I noticed about your bio is it had a wonderful spirit and great energy, but it needed a little more specificity about what it is that's your focus right now so that you can go ahead and make that hay where the sun is shining. And I know we've spoken offline before, and you've told me that your career has taken off in a really big way and that your income has escalated dramatically. And I think that that has something to do with having a message that really lands and showing up as the brilliant expert that you are, and also asking for the order. And those three things are kind of like the trifecta. If you're ready for opportunity, someone wants to buy, and you're ready to sell, and you have an excellent presence about you, there's a level of know, like, trust, and confidence that gets communicated that's pretty priceless to assign a value to, especially when you're smiling all the way to the bank.
Yes, and the other thing that I have actually realized is when someone's reading the 100 words or 150 words or 50 words or whatever length they're reading about you, if they're not familiar with you and you've languaged it in such a way that they're stumbling over your words, then that doesn't land very well. And so I had that happen with the prior bio, and I've had several people read this aloud now, introducing me on various podcasts that I've been a part of, and it just rolls off of their tongue. So I'm very excited about it. And so returning to you, Nancy, I want to know a little bit more about your path to becoming the business bio expert and the get known and get paid mentor. Tell me a little bit more so that our audience can learn more about you.
Well, thanks for asking. It was when I first started my business, I owned a public relations agency, and my job was to help people be seen, heard, and celebrated in the media that matter for their message. And that required that I understood what they did in the first place. And so for all of us, our About Me page or our About Us page is probably next to the homepage, the most visited version of most visited page of anyone's website. So I would go to these About Us pages, and I'd be reaching for the caffeine or the no-dos to stay awake, because none of them were very intoxicating or palpitating and memorable in any way. So I developed a whole set of systems and tools and approaches to getting people's magic out of their head and onto paper or online. And that became a particular area of expertise in my PR firm. And then when the Great Recession happened and the whole economy kind of fell apart, my business fell apart too. And I needed to scramble very quickly to find a way to make money to pay the mortgage, or else I was going to lose the house. So on a dare from a friend, she said, "You're so good at helping people make their bios brilliant. I dare you to write a book about it." And so I did. And in 2009, that simple little workbook that I pulled together in 3 weeks or less saved my bacon at the precise time that I needed to bring it home. And then I subsequently built a whole multiple six-figure business based on helping people get known and get paid. And that was like, it was accidental entrepreneurships, I suppose, but I'm so glad that I took that dare, because it really did open up the door for me to become the expert in this area. I don't believe there's anyone else on the planet that knows this content and teaches it the way that I do, to have the kind of impact that it does for so many without people having to obsess ridiculously to get the job done. And if you can get it done faster and easier and better and actually have fun doing it, well, that feels like a pretty good legacy to be leading right now.
Yeah, who would have known something as short as 50 or 100 words could be so, so powerful? And I have to say, the words that you chose to use to describe me got right to the meat of the matter. It tells people exactly what I am doing and what I'm about, and what I can help them with. So I'm going to go ahead and
Yeah, I think you should read it.
read it, and that way folks can actually see what Nancy's about.
And
I
while you're pulling that up, I want to just mention that I lead a Raise Your Voice, Make Your Impact Facebook group. And once a week, I do mini bio makeovers for people who are bold enough to ask. And how this makeover came to pass was that Bettina said, here's my 50 words. What do you think? And because I've known her for over a decade and I know what she's up to, one of my core values is to see, hear, and celebrate people, and to really see who they are and what they bring to the party. And I just knew that she had something good there, but it could be better. So instead of rewriting it, I asked a lot of clarifying questions and said, what if, and what do you think about, and how about this instead? And it was that kind of a dialogue that went on in the Facebook group that resulted in this particular outcome. So with that as an intro, why don't you go ahead and
yes, I'll
let
read
us hear all about you.
it. So folks can actually see the power of the tiny words of 100 or so words. So Bettina, the diminutive 4'9.5" Latina, inspired and empowers women to create big results. They break through their earnings glass ceiling, kick self-imposed limitations to the curb, and live their legacies now. Whether she's coaching from a live or virtual stage, or conferring with a small cohort of women on the rise across the conference table, her championship, strategies, and straight talk compel women to find a whole new gear to succeed beyond their wildest dreams. Welcome, Bettina Carey, right? I mean, that's all a host actually needs. And then they can embellish from there.
But
I
it's
think
so
you did a
you.
marvelous job. It
Don't
describes me to a T. And, to tell you the truth, it really touched my heart, Nancy, as you do touch my heart often with your just incredible giving that you give to everyone. And it touched me because I didn't know that you paid so much attention to me personally, that you would know me. I know I provided some of the writing in advance, but at the end of the day, you really touched my heart by describing me in a way that where I am changing the globe one woman owned business at a time, So it definitely, that's the essence of what I do.
Well, I'm so glad that that's the way you were made to feel, because I think one of the underpinnings of everything I do in my business is this belief that each and every client is deeply important. And I think sometimes that is not the way we're made to feel when we enroll in programs, products, or services. We might feel like one of a cast of thousands who got on the bandwagon was hoping for the best. And in an age where we are overbotted, chatbots are everywhere, sponsored advertising is everywhere. There's just so much about, I got to get more numbers in order to make my numbers. My whole approach for the whole time that I've done business is to see the real human being that is in my presence, and to see what I can do to see, hear, and celebrate them. And that may mean that my growth has been more measured and modest, but I've developed real relationships with real clients who I really see, hear, and celebrate, who are now going off and becoming compensated because they were seen by someone who really had the courage to say, that's pretty good, but we could do better. And you are one of those kind of people that has bio shame or a missing confidence that you don't quite think you've got it nailed, how brilliant is it to have another set of eyes that can say, huh, I think we could do better. Are you open to some upgrades? Because if you're open to upgrades, upgrades are readily available. And for the last, 20 years, it seems like that particular muscle in my skill set is in incredibly good shape.
I would say it reminds me of a savant. There's probably a portion of your brain that is so fully wired, because I've never met anybody quite like you. You have the gift of words in a way that nobody that I know does. And I wouldn't even try to find them if they existed in the world after knowing you. So you
Thank you.
have, you and I have talked a little bit about, finding those folks that are your people and leaving the ones that are not your people. And you've created a system whereby people that are your people, that are interested in what you've got going on, can attend, be a part of, participate in a meaningful way to raise their voice and make an impact, as you like to say. So share a little bit about your system.
Well, what I would say, it's so simple. It doesn't even, I'll just say this. There's so much discussion in the coaching space about the importance of naming and claiming your perfect ideal client. Who's your avatar? Who's your niche audience? Sometimes we talk about this so much, and there's so many people that are struggling to find out, like, who are my people anyway? And I've taught classes on this. I've attended other people's classes on this. And this is what it boils down to. Stop trying to make not your people your people. Stop trying to make not your people your people. It seems so simple, but when I look back on the last 10 or 15 years of my own business, I can think about the people who were the right fit clients that came under the tent to get the value, who are still colleagues, friends, and champions today. And I think to myself, who were those people? What did they have in common? Why is it that they were such a right fit? And if I could just find the words to describe these awesome people that I've had the privilege to serve and speak to them as if there are more of them out there, I will have more of them in my world. But I also remember the people who drove me crazy, the people who stole my time, the people who didn't do the homework, the people that were insisting on a level of service that was ridiculous for a $27 purchase. I mean, if you name and claim the people you want, you can exclude the people that you don't. And only you can say who are not your people. But right about now, with the politics that there are, I noticed one of these mentors that I was following went very boldly to say where he was leaning in terms of his presidential vote. And it was such a repelling post to me that I just decided he's not my people. And sometimes if you have the courage to make a really polarizing statement, you will find out who your people are straight away. So stop trying to make not your people, because if you have more of the right people under the tent or behind the velvet rope, you're going to be working your brilliance for people who see the value, chose you deliberately because of the value, and grow with you or stay with you for extended periods of time because the value continues. And if you are in a situation where you're not feeling it, it's time for you to listen to that and go elsewhere, because we should all have more of the right people under the tent and let the rest of the people be served by someone else.
Yes, I have a similar philosophy, only different, and it's about be where you're celebrated, not just tolerated. And that's
Oh,
yeah. And so if you're, like some people might find themselves in a situation where they were in a good place at one time, but then they're not in a good place now, but they haven't figured out what to do. Whenever you say that to yourself, am I here to be celebrated or am I just being tolerated? The decision is usually almost instantaneous. It's like a guillotine. It just says, I'm done. I'm not
well,
be just
yeah, I love
tolerated.
that. And I'm also reminded of, this was early in my business, when sometimes there are people that say, oh, anyone with a pulse is good enough for me. Just let me have a client to work with and I'll be happy. And I remember having dinner with one of my neighbors who was a very successful financial advisor leading a very successful firm in Bellevue, Washington. And I was telling him about some of my trials and tribulations around client attraction and making sure the right people were under the tent. And he laughed at me and smiled and he said, you know, we have a funny way of dealing with that at our firm. And I said, oh, tell me more. And he said, people will come and say that they've decided that we're the firm that they want and they're all ready to invest or sign on the dotted line. And every person to a person, we tell them, we're so glad that you want to be part of our organization. The new business development committee meets next week and we'll let you know if we have a place for you. And at the time that I heard this, I laughed just like you're laughing because it seemed so foreign to me. But he was really, really clear that his ideal client needed to have a certain magnitude of assets under management, and they needed to be a certain age, and they needed to have a certain philosophy around investing. And they weren't going to compromise in any way, shape, or form with regard to who was going to come in, because they'd learned that people that weren't a good fit were going to take so much of their time and it wasn't going to be false economy. And so he was trying to deliver that same message to me, which is, don't go for anyone with a pulse. You know, choose someone who truly needs, wants, and has an urgent desire to solve the problems that you solve, and you'll be in good shape. And so stop trying to make not your people your people. It means that you will have more of the right people under the tent who will celebrate you and not tolerate you. And isn't that what we all want?
Yes, we absolutely do. In fact, we have a formal speaker program as well, a selection committee, for similar reasons, because everybody wants to be, on the summit platform and they want to be a part of it. So we do have a very specific way that we select our speakers, and it's for the same reasons. We've had, every once in a while, somebody will slip into your life that is more of a drain than they are of an energy driver. And
Well,
so
since you
we try
brought
to
that up,
eliminate
I
that.
mean, that's such an important thing to talk about, because so much of the emphasis of the work I'm doing now is helping people to be that dream guest that gets invited again and again to much bigger stages and hotter podcasts and bigger audiences to serve. And you being someone who is in a position to select speakers, I mean, maybe you can share a little bit about what you've experienced. I mean, obviously you have a selection process and an input document where people need to show up and suggest why they are the one. But have you noticed in your own experience that some people follow the instructions and some people don't? And I mean,
Yep.
what have you noticed?
So it's great. It's a great question, Nancy. And so here's the deal. If 20 people come to me in any way, shape, or form, they text me or they email me that they're interested, and we send them the form, only about 50% of them will actually execute the form, because the form requires that they provide us their social media, that they provide us their bio, that they provide us their headshot, and a number of assets that we then use to promote the heck out of them. And some people just aren't ready. But what we still have found, even with our own form, and this is why I'm really excited about your Bye Bye Boring Bio getting released in September, again, re-released, is the fact that their bios suck a lot of the time. And then guess who has to write them on the fly? Because I'm not a Bye Bye Boring Bio expert, but if I've got to introduce them, I've got to do something about their bios. And so we have, we try to, again, we only need a potent 100-word description. But if it reads, like you're talking about yourself and it's in the first person, not the third person, I have to rewrite that whole thing. I'm not interested in rewriting people's bios.
Well, and so here's the
You need
thing,
a third person.
it's so good to hear you say these things from your experience as someone who's an icon of influence, who has the power to open big doors. Because when people show up like winners with a brilliant bio, if the call to action was to submit today and 50 people submitted today and all their bios were brilliant and their headshots were professional quality, and whatever free gift you were inviting them to share was on the money, et cetera, your job would be made so much easier. But if you become one of those high maintenance guests that piecemeals her application together and doesn't asks for so much help, even at the application process, you set yourself up to be high maintenance all the way through instead of a pleasure to work with. And when it comes time for someone like you to make recommendations to other people of who should be on your next podcast, program, summit, you're going to remember the people who got it right, and you're going to not remember to refer the people who didn't. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. And here's another thing that most folks don't have. We started this interview today wondering whether we should ask some questions that you had in mind. And you had a place right on your website that I could go. I'm staring right at it. If I wanted to ask one of your questions, I could just look at it and ask. Having a sizzle sheet, having one sheet, as some people call it, having, the 10 questions or the 20 questions, you have 2 sets of questions that I can ask you at any time. I can look up and ask one of your questions. And that level of preparedness, when that meets opportunity, the world is your oyster. And you've experienced that. But again, we're processing now between 30 and 50 speakers just for the September summit. And it's growing by leaps and bounds. So by December summit, we probably will have upwards of 70 speakers involved. I can't sit around and write 100 words for each of those individuals. They have to be bio worthy. And so putting them in the third person is very, very helpful as well, because that's just another step I don't want to have to take. And the other thing that I really appreciate about you, Nancy, is that you do have everything on your website. So just to give you an example, in June when we were doing our summit, we needed to create very quickly and on the fly all of the speakers, an asset that would have all of the speakers on there. So we went to their LinkedIn presence, their images, as well as their titles and how they described themselves and the topic that they would be speaking. And what we found was we did the draft, and then we would get, oh, that's not the title I'm going by right now. Oh, that's not the picture I want to use. Then why is it on your LinkedIn?
Right. And this is
up to date.
This is the other thing that I've noticed, because thanks for bringing that up, because that happens all the time.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, it is a very powerful platform, and the average income of a professional on LinkedIn is considerably higher than the income of someone on Facebook. And if it's been 3 years, 3 months, who knows how long since you've actually paid attention to what's on your LinkedIn, chances are things have changed since the last time, and you could have missed a whole lot of opportunity just by not being up to date. And one of the bonus resources in the Bye Bye Boring Bio 2020 workbook is an interview I did with Deborah Matthias that offers step-by-step exactly what you need to do to upgrade and elevate your LinkedIn profile so that it will be media ready. And I highly recommend that you do that. And the other thing I wanted to say is more of a mindset thing. Some of us have our head down doing whatever we're doing, and we're thinking someday Oprah will call, and when that happens, I'll worry about it later. What if we could decide today to have the mindset and belief that the most important, most influential icon of influence was going to call us tomorrow and invite us to be on their program? Because if you change your mindset, all of a sudden things start coming your way.
Yeah.
And the beauty of having that link on my website that has all of my assets for interviews ready to go is even if I'm on the beach in San Diego or somewhere crazy where I don't have access to my computer, I'm 30 seconds away from giving that host everything he or she needs to have a fantastic interview. That's a win for that host. But you know what? Don't forget, and make no mistake, that's a win for you too, because that 11th hour scrambling at the last minute to pull together what is needed is not what you want. You don't want your vacation interrupted, your intimate time with your family, whatever it is. Be ready, because interviewing takes time. And if you don't have to spend time assembling those assets, and you can spend the bulk of your time connecting with your host and having a great conversation, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to have a much better experience, and people will get to know, like, and trust you, and they will ping pong back into your world gladly because you're just a graceful, easy guest. So look at it from both the host's perspective and from your own perspective, and believe and behave as if the most important person was going to call you tomorrow, because it changes everything. And
they could.
And, you know, I got to tell you, I started with the COVID-19 scenario. We were all in this together, as you say so often. But right around March 1st, if you were a professional speaker, your life kind of changed very quickly. And you were thinking, how the heck am I going to make a living?
Yes.
But there are over 1 million podcasts on the air today that are actively looking for guests that have interest in what you talk about. And I have booked 30 or more podcasts for myself since March 1st. And now, just last week, 3 top hosts got in touch with me and said, I saw you on this other podcast. I want you on my show now. And it's like, what if the most influential podcast saw you somewhere else and decided to invite you to their program? One good thing leads to another. And without you even having to leave your house, you could broadcast your brilliance, be of service, and ping pong listeners back into your world so that you can have the opportunity to do business with them. To me, that is an incredibly empowering and positive way to deal with the lemonade that were the lemons that we were served up when COVID-19 came to call.
Yes, and you know, I was having an as if, act as if conversation with a friend of mine this morning, and I was sharing with her that I had a situation that, Nancy, your 100-word bio completely worked for me. It was 15 minutes till 10 on a Saturday. I wasn't expecting a call from a friend. She called me to say that one of her judges in this crowdfunding, kind of a little bit like America's Got Talent contest, had to bow out because they had a death in the family. And would I be able to step in? And because, as people who know me know, I always get dressed in the morning, put on my makeup. It's my only artistic adventure every day. Been doing it for 50 years. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I would already be ready, dressed, and ready to go. And so within a few minutes, I got on Instagram to do a live feed for an hour plus. And what should they ask me for? Tell me a little bit about yourself. I popped it over to them because I'm a replacement. They have nothing on me. And I send it over to them and they read it aloud on Instagram. This is a contest out in South Africa. You know,
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't have been able to say yes to that. I would have been able to say yes, let me see what I can do. I'm not sure I can do it, you know, some version of that. But I was able to say yes. And I went right to my website where it lives now and copy and pasted it on my phone, talking with them on Instagram. That would not have been possible. So
I
when
love
you're
that.
ready and opportunity knocks, the world is your oyster when you have something like a powerful bio. And I have,
Well, and the other thing is, this is
yeah,
the other thing that's really important. I emphasize that the bio is the thing that opens the door to something more that you want: the clients, the collaborations, the connections, the cash. And if your business model is fuzzy and you're not clear what the primary thing you want people to do is crystal clear, you can speak out into the air all you like, but not have anything to show for it. So if you want to invite people to have a discovery session to talk about how your ABC program can help solve their most urgent problem, you know, 1-800-CALL-Bettina.com or whatever you're going to, you know, have some easy to say, spell, and remember way for people to get into your world, even if it's a low-tech way like picking up a phone and dialing it. Because if one person reaches out to have a conversation and that person becomes that $30,000 a year client or $300,000 a year client, was it worth it? I would think so. But if you're fuzzy about what you want people to do, or you give them too many things to do as a call to action, chances are they will do nothing and you won't have anything to show for it.
yeah.
So be clear what you want people to do and keep your eye high on the prize where you can be of greatest value to that person, so that the exchange of energy and value is really generous for everybody. Then you're going to be set up well to profit from that conversation.
And you know, the thing that people may not realize is this 100-word description of yourself can also lead into some other opportunities. And again, we just did this a few weeks ago. And I also used it as my about in the press release that's going out today about our upcoming We Empower You Summit. on September the 9th. I was also in the Chick Chat in Women to Watch section where I used that same 100-word description with some minor inclusion of some other content. And it continues to unfold where I get to use this. I've been on 6 podcast interviews of recent, like weeks, and they have been able to read it out loud. And so it's not just a 100-word bio that lives on your website. It's actually going to roll into other ways that you are able to speak about yourself in other mediums. And so that's another important distinction I think people don't necessarily get. So that's why the value of your program, which I hope you'll share with us now, is there, because you over deliver, never under deliver. You over deliver. You're so generous and kind-hearted. I have to say that anyone who has anything to do with what you're doing in terms of wanting to have their voices raised and make an impact in the world, they really need to be in touch with you, Nancy, because you really do know what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Just like it's a goal and a value for me to see, hear, and celebrate others so they can be compensated. And it's also a value to be generous. And I remember one of my longest standing mentors once said about me, Nancy's all of the help and none of the hype. And if you are someone who's hyped out and ready for the real thing, then you know that I'm your people. And I would love to have the opportunity to be in your world if I'm a fit. So what I would suggest as a call to action is Bettina and I have been talking about the brilliant Bye Bye Boring Bio 2020 workbook that debuts on September 20th. And it's everything you need to know to prepare and share your message so that you can be the podcast dream guest, the broadcast dream guest, the expert that gets called up to bigger stages to make your difference in the world. And if you want a taste of that as my gift, go get the Amazon #1 best-selling preview to Bye Bye Boring Bio 2020. And Bettina will share a link to it in the show notes so that you can run, not walk, and get access to that. Because as soon as you do, you can also join me for the Be the Podcast Dream Guest Challenge that's coming up on launch day, September 8th. And boy, oh boy, if you've enjoyed this conversation, wait till you get 5 days of awesomeness. My gift to you to show you how you can be the podcast dream guest too.
And I've already got mine.
Yay!
Even though my summit is coming up on the 9th, I will be there on the 8th.
Thank you. Thank you. We've got hundreds of people, I think maybe even thousands of people that are going to be joining us.
Fantastic.
And I've been working behind the scenes, typical Nancy, to be amazingly prepared with awesome content that will exceed your expectations for generosity and practical value. And so join us. It's free to participate. And if you want to have the Bye Bye Boring Bio 2020 workbook wing its way to your doorstep, there will be an opportunity for you to do that. It's a modest upsell, but you might find it well worth it, especially for the opportunity to have the ease and convenience of all the replays from the training to enjoy for your lifetime.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. And for those of you who are listening and watching here today, I'm Bettina Carey, and I'm founder of Women in Small Biz Shows and Events. And what I do is big, dream big, break through and connect with powerful women and bold men like you. We are having the upcoming Women's Empowerment Summit on September the 9th from 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. And we hope you will join us. And get this, for anyone who helps us to grow our membership, we are going to you. So that's 50% of our admission, 30% of our admission and 50% of our membership. So anyone who's interested, and that includes people who've lost their jobs, people who have a business that's had to close, someone who wants to fund a dream, you can earn $5 on our admission and $800 on our membership. That's per person. Thank you again, Nancy, for coming today and joining me and having this wonderful conversation. I wish you all the best. I will be there right by your side, of course, for the rest of your journey here.
Well,
Bye
thank
for
you
now.
so much.